Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Astrology Hub podcast. I'm so delighted that you have decided to join us for the August forecast. We're about to embark upon the month, or maybe you're watching this a little bit later and we are already into August. But today we have with us an astrologer that I absolutely adore and respect and admire and have been helped by so much through the years. I've had readings with Andrea Michelle. I've had lots of different encounters with her and always find her so fascinating to talk to. So she's going to be helping us get a glimpse into August. There's going to be about 6 or 7 different main transits that we cover. We're also going to talk about the overarching theme for August and kind of the ideas that you can take with you as you're navigating the different astrological tides ahead. We wanted to do something that I've never done before for one of these forecasts, but it's been on my heart lately. And it is this idea of prediction in astrology, in forecasting in astrology. I know from personal experience how helpful it can be to get a glimpse ahead at the astrological tides and currents. I also have experienced both within myself and then witnessing in our community that sometimes instead of anchoring you in a context and helping to empower you, that sometimes it can contribute to the sense of anxiety and sometimes contribute to the sense of fear. And that is something that we never want to be proliferating here at Astrology Hub. So I wanted to just ask you, Andrea Michelle, I know we're so often very much on the same page with how we view astrology and its role in our lives. And so as a forecaster or as someone who's actually looking into the future and doing a sense of prediction, how do you work with it in that way? And what is your approach?
I am so grateful you're asking this question because this is something that I sit with all the time for me and how I speak to clients, how I use astrology for myself. So one of the things that I like to do is, first of all, remind myself as well as clients and people that I'm sitting with that anything can be looked at as good or bad, right? It's all a matter of where we are holding it. Are we holding it from a place of something is happening to me? Or am I holding it in a place of this? There's something that is happening in the cosmos that is triggering something that is already alive within me somewhere that is now being illuminated and enlivened by this transit. So it's not like it's coming from left field or somewhere. It's illuminating a part of my psyche. And a term that I've been really sitting with that's coming alive for me a lot these days is psychic biodiversity, which is becoming more relational with the different aspects of our psyche that these transits and progressions and things illuminate for us. So I like to empower my clients by seeing things as an opportunity to get more intimate with where I've either been withholding more of my aliveness or where I'm ready to let go of an old story that doesn't suit me anymore, or where being in this place of I don't quite know where I am yet is precisely the alchemical space in which we can go deeper than our nervous system responses and access something greater in ourselves, more of our psychic biodiversity to support us in our discovery. So, and I also personally, I like working with one aspect at a time. Because to me, because everything is holographic, anything can be an entry point into the whole. So I love working with like a very specific signature or asteroid or planet in the chart over a longer period of time, because then I get to know it intimately. And then I have a greater relationship with it and everything it's really in relationship with in my chart. And so that becomes a doorway, a very bite-sized, manageable, and yet very full way to access more of my multidimensional psychic biodiversity.
I love that. That's amazing. So basically you'd say to anybody listening, we're going to go through 6 or 7 of the sort of highlights for August, but you can, like, if there's one particular aspect or transit that we talk about that like just calls to you, just focus on that one and really just be with it in your life and see all the different ways that it's showing up and all the things that it's inviting you into and all of the different storylines that are alive with that one aspect and those particular archetypes that are at play in that aspect.
Yes, yes. Because then we have an opportunity to actually develop a relationship with it.
Yes.
It's not just a thought or an idea that comes in and leaves, and then we're on to the next thing, where there's actually no relationship that's been made. Working with one thing is, hey, I would like to get to know you more intimately, me, in the form of this aspect. And then it wants to dance with you. If you engage with life, life will engage with you.
Oh, God, that's so good. Golden, golden. Okay, as we embark on August, just keep that in mind. It is holographic. You can hone in on one thing and it does relate to everything else. You don't have to feel like you're missing something really important. That one thing has within it everything that you need to know. So this is great. All right, let's talk about the theme for August. Maybe someone wants to just focus on the theme for August, but
right.
What would you say is the theme for August? What are the main ideas that we're walking with through this month?
Awesome. So the tagline for it would be, live your mythology, not your stories. So we get to practice this month, bridging more sort of uncharted territory and interrupting our own disabling stories. Okay. So it kind of began, one way of marking it, because there's different ways of marking it, would be the recent Venus superior conjunction with the sun, right? At that conjunction where she was farthest from Earth with the sun in between, Mercury and Jupiter were what's called partile conjunct, meaning they were at the exact same degree in the sign ruled by Mercury. This month of August, there's a lot of Virgo energy, another sign ruled by Mercury. So this is Mercury's time. Mercury is just kind of like sitting high. So there's something about Jupiter in Mercury's sign, with Jupiter being at the fulcrum of several squares that are happening this month. It's kind of a tense month that is accentuating, in one way, his exile. So Jupiter rules both traditionally Pisces and Sagittarius. So then by definition, the sign opposite a sign that it rules would be its sign of exile. Like that's the case for Gemini. But is exile a bad thing? So we hear the word exile and that sounds like, oh, that could be really bad. But depending on how we orient to it, as we were talking a little bit before we started recording, Jupiter is like in charge all the time of everything. He might like want a break and be like, okay, see y'all have to deal with Olympus yourselves. I'm off on a vision quest, right? So it's self-exile in a sense. And it's a way to find a new story, to find the deeper mythology underneath what I call the catalog stories, which is how we normally project our history onto the moment. So Jupiter in exile can forge a new path, learn with fresh eyes, and walk in the shoes of our exiled parts. We can use this month to really sit with, maybe even journal, the parts of ourselves that we feel most disconnected from, least in relationship with, and really see how much we want to pick one, right? So we don't overwhelm ourselves, and walk with it or as it for this month to really get more of a sense of, what is this part of me that I can open up to, be curious around, open my heart to, welcome it in?
Could there be indicators in our personal charts of what aspect of our, because I'm guessing
Absolutely.
If we're disconnected from it, we might not even know it exists.
Yes, exactly. So Chiron could be one, definitely one aspect. Anything that is in relationship with Pluto, for example, because Pluto can tend to hide or suppress things. Scorpio placements can also be that way. Planets that are in conjunct each other, meaning either they're within 30 degrees of separation, so they're kind of in each other's blind spots, or in quincunx. So if you're someone who relies heavily on your Mars function, and it's in a quincunx to your Jupiter, for example, and you're less reliant or you're less familiar with or comfortable with the idea of like what your truth is, going out on your own, like forging a new path, or kind of having a sense of adventure in terms of what is it I'm here to do, but I'm really good at just kind of making stuff happen or working hard or whatever it might be. maybe Jupiter could be something that you could open up to more. Why is it something that's a little bit scary for me to go there?
And when you say open up to these aspects of our psyche that we're disconnected from, and that August is a really good time to like decide that you want to do that. Like we're putting ourselves in exile in a way,
Right.
and we're exploring these things, right?
Yes.
Give us an example. Like what would that look like tangibly?
It could be literally, and it's almost always 99.9% of the time, it involves giving ourselves time. Creating a little window of time for ourselves is the most important thing. Because if we're moving too fast for ourselves, guaranteed we're not available for whatever is happening in our moment. There's too much happening. We might be overwhelming ourselves. And when we're overwhelming ourselves, we are by definition not available to become intimate with what's happening for ourselves because there's too much. There's too much distraction. So slowing down, making some time, whether you're a journaler, whether you're a meditator, whether you're someone who likes to paint, this is a great month too to really accentuate. If you're more left brain oriented, to try things more from the right brain. If you're more right brain oriented, focus more on the left brain. We're really looking to cross boundaries in a sense of building up weaker muscles in ourselves. So it could be like just take 10 minutes a day and slow down and allow the thoughts to come to you. And you don't have to write down the first thing that comes. Just wait to see what keeps showing up, and then write it down. And just like over the course of the month or 3 weeks or however long you want to do that, just kind of like gift yourself the gift of slowing down and offering this little piece of like a window into yourself that you might not normally give yourself. That's a form of self-honoring and a form of really starting to get to come online in ways that are perhaps beneath the nervous system orientation that most of us live through.
And if someone identified Chiron or something, for example,
Yes.
they would carve out the space and then journal, or like, what would you do with that then?
Great. Yes. So you could ask to have a relationship with Chiron. It's so funny. Like I'm one of those people who's taken years to believe that just asking for something might happen. And almost it's like I didn't want to do that because I was afraid something would actually happen. And It would undermine my story that I'm going to ask and nothing's going to come. But the real hidden fear was that I will get what I want and then I won't know what to do because it hasn't ever happened before like this. So that's one thing too, is it might be that we first have to meet with any fear around, I might get what I want. I might get an answer. That in and of itself is a nugget of gold. Before we've even gotten to the aspect or the planet in question, everything is part of our thread, part of our track, as we'll be talking about a little bit later. Nothing is out of the realm of that's not important, that's not important. Everything is part of our adventure. But if we were to think, if someone were to have a relationship with Chiron, where do I feel most deeply dissociated from my truth? Where do I feel like I can never actually get what is most dear to me? And that can be a very, very good exercise of allowing maybe unmet grief. So just the grieving without even getting an answer. If that's what's arising, that's what we want. We tend to like discard what's happening in our moment to get to something that has an agenda behind it that we want to see happen, but we're missing what's actually happening. And that's the juice, is to be present with what is showing up when I have my ask. So it's just, this is Mercury too. It's non-linear, it's non-rational. We have to be available for things to show up in ways that are a surprise, that aren't logical, that open a doorway to a more numinous space.
Love it. Okay, we're already off to the races. We haven't even gotten to the first transit. Right. So let's start going through the transits, and with this in mind that you're going to hone in on just a few of these.
Yes.
Pay attention to which ones call to you. If you're watching this on YouTube or a place where you can leave a comment for us, let us know what you're going to hone in on, because that would be, interesting to see what's really calling to people.
Excellent. Okay. So August 2nd, we've got Venus in Leo, square Uranus in Taurus. No, I don't have the degrees of that. I think it's 26 of those signs, which would be, Leo and Taurus. Apologize, I didn't put those in here. And what's interesting, Amanda, I'm going to give your folks a couple of sky shots and this chart thing. So maybe that can be superimposed on the video once it comes, because I really, as you know, I love to bring in the sky, because talk about content versus context. The sky gives us a bigger context in which we can meet these aspects in ourselves. We're not just looking at the 2D chart wheel. So at this exact square of Venus and Taurus on the 2nd of August, we have the Balsamic Moon, which means the moon that's about to come to fruition and at the very end of the lunar cycle onto the next one. The moon is in Cancer with the Mars and Venus midpoint and Venus's geocentric north node. Now, I'm not going to bring in over complex things for the rest of the month, but this image is so beautiful because it's happening in the constellation of the twins. So it's in the sign of Cancer, this moon midpoint, but it's in the twins. It's literally in between, like the shared heart of the twins. And Mercury rules both Gemini and the twin constellation. So with the moon here, the sky, as always, shows us this greater context. So it's reminding us that there's always a bigger picture we can't grasp with our minds, but our heart and body knows if we allow ourselves to open to it. This is how we begin to track our mythology. We can't track it with the mind. And our mythology is not something that's on a linear path. If our path is laid out before us, it's not our path. That's a famous Carl Jung quote, right? It's a track, like an animal track, that you find, you follow for a time, and then it seems to get lost. We are meant to lose our track. That's part of the lesson of becoming mature as human beings, is how do we respond when we've lost our track? Do we give up on ourselves or do we keep going? So there's something around the fact that these twins, there's one mortal and one immortal twin. Venus rules Uranus in her sign of Taurus. And with her fairly recent return to visibility as an evening star here, there's a potential expansion of identity and safety structures that are ready to accommodate a more complex and greater integration of seemingly opposing forces, because the moon's on the Mars-Venus midpoint, like our time-bound form with our timeless nature. So in other words, there could be a greater awakening of a sense of safety within ourselves, with a greater portion of our being coming online, creating a bigger library of safety than we've known before. And it could be something that just lasts for moments or days, like people who have samadhi experiences, for example, but they can't keep it up. Not because they're failure, just because their safety isn't calibrated to that much truth, consciousness, reality at one time. So we might have some people having some real insights or awakening experiences, or a sense of themselves being bigger than they normally feel, and it might contract again. That's okay. It's not a failure. It's just showing you that your level of safety has expanded for a time, and it's going to, accordion back, but you've had an experience of yourself bigger than you normally know yourself to. And that in and of itself is a gem. Okay. So then we have August 3rd, moon opposite Pluto. So one of the words that I'm going to be using this month a little bit later, but I'm starting here with Pluto and Aquarius, is defrag. Pluto is like defragging, kind of like when you clean up your computer from viruses or cleaning the cache. You can run a software on your program or an app, like a JavaScript, that will, like your brain, like on the computer, it will clean up the hard drive. Pluto is essentially like the big ass, like power washer of the psyche, especially these old where we've compartmentalized ourselves. Because Aquarius is genius, but it's a fixed sign, and it can also be where we have compartmentalized ourselves into various realities, but there's no congruence or synchronicity to them. So Pluto is the great equalizer and defragger. Okay. So this is still a heavily balsamic moon this day. So there's more encouragement to meet and soften into the stuck places and brittle self-identities wanting and ready to be composted. Okay. So this is taking place at 0. The moon will be at 0 Leo, Pluto at 0 Aquarius. These are the seed energies of the entire sign. So we have to remember that we must lay to rest the old before anything new can form. Matter is neither destroyed nor created. It's just a matter of where in us we want to reconstitute that. So it's like, what are we ready to let go of and have a little defrag happening, even though it might be uncomfortable, so that we can make way for a broader self-identity, to accommodate more of who we never thought we could experience, except in those awakening moments like Uranus, okay? So sometimes, especially with Neptune at 29 degrees of Pisces here for some time, is underscoring one of the things that helps the defrag process is literally oftentimes grief, because grief is the primary method of opening our hearts. And when we open our hearts, we are opening ourselves to our greater intelligence. I know we talked about that once in a prior podcast about Aquarius being the heart's intelligence, in a sense, right? The central command of our heart's intelligence. So August 4th and 5th, we have Mercury stationing retrograde at 4 Virgo, with Venus newly in Virgo, super close to Regulus. And the moon is meeting up with Venus in an occultation at 1 Virgo. So this is a big thing. The moon and Venus, an occultation, you've heard maybe me and other astrologers talk about before, is when one planet covers another. So oftentimes we can see conjunctions in the chart by longitude, where two planets are at the same degree. But by latitude, they might be very, very far from each other. So it's kind of not a strong conjunction. An occultation is where they meet both by latitude and longitude. So the energies are really informing each other. So in this case, the moon is covering Venus. So we are just on the heels here of the Leo new moon. This is the first conjunction with Venus and the moon since her heliacal rise as an evening star. And the fact that it's an occultation makes it more powerful. So if we think archetypally, Venus has just risen from the underworld in late July. The moon, whenever she meets with the moon now as an evening star, it's a waxing crescent moon. So if we think of Venus as the part of ourselves that is our deeper feeling nature, and the moon as our ego, our primary ego structure and our emotional nature, this is an ego that is being held, or emotions being held by a deeper sense of ourselves coming from the underworld, a greater perspective, a greater psychic biodiversity. How much more of me can hold my emotional content without identifying as the emotional content? How can I form a relationship, Venus, with a sense of an identity of myself that's not limited by my old stories, by my old, again, we were talking about finding your mythology, not living your old stories. So this is a rebuilding. It's almost like a reframing, but more than just reframing with words, it's important that the reframe happen from how much more of me can be involved in meeting my old habits, how much more of me is capable of holding me in these places. And I have to slow down and see if I can withhold judgment, withhold needing to fix, because that's a very strong Virgo trait, and just allow me just as I am, in other words. So it's a very, very strong invitation, and we can really have lasting impact. The more we can slow down with this, the few days prior to this, and maybe a couple days after, people want to use this as their example. This is a really, really good, strong way to form relationship with maybe some exiled parts of myself, where some stories ready to die, so that more of the deeper track of my life can start to make its way and be felt in my body.
Andrea Michelle, when you talk about living our mythos instead of living our story, how do you differentiate those two things?
Our stories are the very unconscious, automatic things that populate our belief systems about ourselves, personalities, self-identity structures that populate our moment instantaneously. Always. We don't even know that they're happening. We're swimming in it in a way that a fish swims in water it doesn't even know. This is just how we're living. And so it's literally for safety. This is the ego's way of defining safety. If I superimpose what I already know works on my moment, guaranteed I'll survive it, right? But it's literally compartmentalizing us into, okay, this I will focus on, everything else happening in my moment, I'll ignore. But that's the psychic biodiversity I was talking about. And that's where the mythos lives. And our mythology is our soul's purpose. It's our soul's track. It's beneath and before the stories of who we think we are. And it's longing to be lived through and as us. It's longing to include the ego as part of the journey and being representative of it. It's not about diminishing the ego or trying to get rid of it. It's like bringing it on board. But in order to bring it on board, oftentimes we just need to leave space sometimes for the ego to do its thing for a while, but we don't have to believe it. This is the practice of allowing more space and slowing down.
And do you see the mythology that our soul came here to live? I mean, like you're seeing that in the astrology chart, right? There's story, there's pieces of that mythology that we can see.
Yes, there are pieces of it. I would not be comfortable saying that I could see what somebody's life purpose is. I could get a sense based on the sign, house and aspects and the planets of a general direction, but everybody is so unique. And I am just not clairvoyant and I don't have that capacity to say, this is what your purpose is. However, I can help support somebody and ask questions around what brings you joy. That's a good marker of your mythos. What really excites you? What turns you on? What makes you lean in even more, even if there's fear there? What really excites you? That's what we were talking about. These are the kind of things that might not be acceptable to our personality selves, our families, even our culture in some ways. And this is where the Jupiter-Saturn square coming up is indicative of a way that we can work through this. How do we break free from this nebulous fear and conditioning around where we feel exiled from our purpose? Or where we might have instances where we receive from the outside reflections of people wanting to exile us for not having the same beliefs or wanting the same things. And how do we just stay with what's true? How do we keep true with the courage of our Leo hearts? Because we have, again, this is happening, what I was just talking about with Regulus, the Venus and the Moon are going to be with Regulus. So I wrote, how much are we available to allow ourselves to become increasingly visible as servants to the light and courage of our lion hearts, to serve and embody our greater self through our identity structures, not some fixed ideas or prefab roles, what I call the catalog stories. Okay. So it takes courage. It does. It's not something that's, again, when we lean into life, life will respond. We can't just kind of wait and just, for the opportunities to knock on our door. We have to have some skin in the game. There has to be some level of engagement, some willingness to even be wrong about ourselves in order to really, really access life's deeper current, which is our purpose, our mythology.
Do you think that's by design? I mean, the thing that's so interesting is that like pretty much everyone has the fear of pursuing the thing that really lights them up so authentically and so uniquely. It doesn't really seem to matter what kind of family you came from or what kind of upbringing or what town you lived in. It feels like this universal collective fear. So then it makes me think, well, is it just by design that way so that we actually face it and move beyond it? And that's actually part of what we're here to do?
Yes, there's so many different takes on that, Amanda, but essentially, yes. One way of looking at it, which is just as true as any other way of looking at it, because multiple things can be true, different levels, right? Is fear is the guardian of our greatest treasure. So as long as we're available to meet it, or at least lean into it, or at least acknowledge how much I'm living from a fear-based paradigm, and it shows up as ADD, or it shows up as overwhelm, or it shows up as depression, or nihilism, or bipolar, or whatever I've been diagnosed as, or whatever. But it's really just asymptomatic of a generalized fear of the nervous system. Then absolutely. So you're right. And it's just for the courageous to really just and we all have that to some degree, to just say, if this is going to be happening anyway, I might as well just go for it to whatever extent available. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Okay. And I know I love this. Fear is the guardian of our greatest treasure.
Yes.
That is so really one of those questions you said before is, what am I afraid of? What am I afraid to pursue? And maybe that's one of the focuses of August is actually taking steps in that direction.
Yes, exactly. Yes, we have a lot of support for that.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the most concentrated energies happen between August 18th and August 25th. So August 18th and 19th, we've got Gemini, Jupiter in a T square with Virgo, Venus, and Saturn retrograde in Pisces. And the Jupiter and Saturn retrograde square has already kind of been coming online. There's a lot of stuff. Okay. Again, I kind of put a lot of stuff together and I'm going to bring it in as like this story plot. Mercury is still retrograde. And with Vesta, I'm not bringing a lot of the asteroid goddesses in because I don't want to overcomplexify this, but she's right there with the sun. And Mercury and Vesta are squaring Uranus. And then Mercury has this interior conjunction all within the course of those 2 days. Okay. And then we have the full moon. So it's a party. And we have Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn are at 17 degrees of their respective signs. Venus in Virgo, Jupiter in Gemini, and Saturn in Pisces. And Mercury retrograde is with Vesta, and they're in Leo. Mercury started his retrograde at 4 Virgo, but is going through mostly Leo, okay? And then the Mercury Cazimi, the interior conjunction, is at 26 Leo. So we might experience in these days seemingly endless choices or mental chatter. There might be a lot of hypersensitivity to timelines or deadlines or shoulding ourselves, like, oh my God, maybe even anxiety in the middle of the night, like waking up with like to-do lists or, oh my God, like I wanted to do this by this age and why am I not doing it? Like this amplified energy of like mental chatter, but I have to go here, but wait, no, I have to finish that and all this stuff. So because Venus is in the mix with Jupiter and Saturn, we're likely to be affected by these energies a little bit more personally because she's a personal planet. Now, again, so much of it depends on where people have placements of planets or angles in their chart at these degrees of the mutable signs, like anywhere between like 15 to 19 degrees of mutable signs, anything you have there, especially more of the personal planets or moon, you might feel this even more, right? So it's not a matter of where we're choosing so much as where we're choosing from. Again, this speaks to whether or not we are listening to our stories or paying attention to at least making space for our mythology to arise. And our mythology might be something we already know and have tapped into, but we got amnesia. It went dark on us for a time because it would have been too much to follow it through or follow it more at that time. We don't know. Honestly, we ain't smart enough to figure out how the universe and the magic of it all works, but we are loved and we are supported. And again, the more we lean in and just allow ourselves to accept where we're at, that we're going to lose our track and we can pick it up and it's never too late, we can relax a little bit more and just recognize, okay, I have been meant to lose my track, or I'm meant to go through a period where I don't know what's happening. Maybe that's an invitation to face this threshold. Before I can get to the gifts, how much am I actually available for? Not what my head tells me, but how much can I really be in relationship with my gifts, which means I'm a lot more available to actually receive and integrate them and then have them become just a part of what I live and breathe, not just nice information about myself. And that requires that slowing down and giving ourselves space.
It also reminds me of a reframe I recently heard about procrastination. And how we can be really hard on ourselves for procrastinating.
Yeah.
But that often it's just not the right time, or we're having hesitation for a reason.
Yes.
Or it's just like you just said, we're not quite ready to embody the fullness of whatever that is. And so if we did force ourselves forward, it wouldn't be in the full capacity that it could be if the timing was right or more right.
Yeah.
And this I just feel so helpful because, again, I think we can be really hard on ourselves for not doing everything all at once. And, like you said, up in the middle of the night, why haven't I accomplished this by this age? And comparing ourselves to other people. But but that there is a moment when the fruit is ripe. And you have a tree, you have a mango tree in Hawaii here.
Yeah.
You don't pull the mango before it's ripe because you can't eat it. It's going to be
Right.
horrible.
Yeah.
But once it's ripe, and you know. So there's this part of coming back to trusting that we know when we know.
Yes.
And there are cycles and there is perfect timing. And yes, I know you don't put everything off forever, but it's this combo of both those things, because sometimes we also don't proceed because we're so afraid to proceed. But,
exactly. Yeah. And this comes back to Jupiter and Gemini. One way of looking at it is like Sagittarius can be one way of looking at it, the know-it-all, right? I know everything there is to know. There's nothing I need to learn again. So that's why Jupiter is in exile. Now, again, I'm not trying to paint an unflattering picture of Sagittarius. Sagittarius has a lot of amazing qualities. But one reason maybe Jupiter is in exile is because, there's more stuff that I didn't know, or there's more to piece together that because I thought I knew everything, or I knew everything really well in these two tracks, but there's all this other part of my psyche that I don't know crap yet, that this is the idea of being in exile. It's more like I'm in exile because I don't know myself here, but maybe that's the humility that's required. That's the beginner's mind that we need, that we're always a student, no matter how much we think we know. So our commitment and our devotion to wonder is the fuel and the fire that can burn through the stories so we can live our heart's mythology. And again, our mythology is something we discover moment by moment. It's not laid out ahead of us. It could be laid out for a few months at a time, or even a couple of years at a time. But the tendency, because our human nature at this point in our evolution is to get really comfortable and complacent with what we know, we're going to get in a rut. So what's going to happen? If our track is meant to go like this and go around, that's what retrogrades are. Mercury retrograde. Hey, I lost my track. Perfect time to go back in a non-linear way to try to find it again, to open my senses to more of where it could be. If we keep wanting it to force it in a linear way, of course we're getting it off the track, right? So it's just about recognizing, and this is what's really beautiful about retrograde periods, is allowing this sense of exploration, of non-linearity, of the mystery, of the numinous, of the paradoxical, especially, that multiple things can be true, even in my own psyche, different layers of my being. Okay. So I don't want to spend too much more time on this, but during Saturn and Pisces, we may have many opportunities to unravel from the unnatural timelines and nervous system pacing that the external world demands, or our inner taskmaster demands, and we are entrained into. So self-care this period, with all this mutable energy, is saying no to what is a distraction so that we can give our presence to what we can sincerely commit to. No more and no less. August 22nd, the moon meets its north node at 7 Aries before the sun enters Virgo with Regulus again. Virgo, Venus squares Gemini Mars at 22 degrees. So this is a reminder that these challenges require us to be sourced from our courage to venture into the wilderness of the unknown. North node in Aries, right? With the sun, with Regulus, really bringing online. Courage has to come from the heart. We can be brave, but that doesn't mean we're connected to our heart. Courage comes from the Latin core, right? Which is from the heart. So choose an open mind and a devoted heart. August 22nd, a good time for this. And recall how the month began with Venus square Uranus, opening the possibility of defragging the compartmentalization of, if I'm this, that means I can't be that. If this has to happen, then that means that absolutely cannot happen. To welcome a greater complexity and fullness of being. And it's not going to happen right away, but the more we allow space for it, the more it can show up in our lives. We need to develop patience too. We often don't recognize, because we are so pushed often by our nervous systems, it's almost like the image is like, so much of us are living in the first world is like we're almost at the edge of a cliff, like some unknown force is pushing us again in this kind of like makeshift linear direction, but we don't recognize that we have the capacity to stop. We can say no. more often than we often want to believe we can, even if it means disappointing people, even if it means that I have to feel how scared I am about disappointing people. It's still, I can choose. So practicing choosing my boundaries, not just some arbitrary boundaries, is very helpful too. So then the August 25th moon trines Venus in Virgo at 25 degrees of Virgo before joining with Uranus at 27 degrees Taurus. So this is the moon in Taurus, trining Venus in Virgo, and then meeting up with Uranus in Taurus. So more defragging and a release of the need to compare, because Virgo can be comparing. I'm not enough. I'm not perfect, right? We perseverate on comparing. So defragging to release the need to compare and make room for collaboration with others who share our unique values. Where can I be different? Where can you be different? And we can go our own way. We don't have to come to some consensus if it's not working. We can just honor things are different and just move on. That's it. But we tend to have to make things to fix things or make it right, or we're not leaving until we get this sorted out. And sometimes that's appropriate. Other times, where is it simply trying to encase an agenda around something because I don't want to just allow things as they are, which means that we disagree sometimes. And that's okay. So then we have August 28, Virgo, Venus opposing Pisces, Neptune retrograde. So again, we have a case of Venus in Virgo in her supposed fall, right? Because she's exalted in Pisces. So like Jupiter in exile, it's all about the context or inner reframe, which is really about how we are orienting inwardly rather than just changing up the words. So this can evoke a deep sense of inadequacy or deficiency, or a wish that I, events, or others were different, a sense of hopelessness. Can we feel the feels without believing them? How many times have we heard that? This is another opportunity for that same thing. This is how Virgo awakens the Pisces consciousness that already lives in her heart. Virgo and Pisces are two different ends of one spectrum. Each polarity point in the zodiac has one subjective form of the same consciousness and one objective form of the consciousness, right? So Virgo is the subjective underlying consciousness that holds both Pisces and Virgo. Pisces is the objective consciousness of the consciousness that holds Virgo and Pisces. So there's always a personal, there's an inner experience and an outer experience. Everything is relational.
And can each sign hold the subjective or objective? Does it depend on what's happening, or is Virgo always the objective and Pisces is the subjective?
That's a great question. Yes, it's like, again, it's like this holographic thing.
Yeah.
On some layer, we can hold the seeming opposite. Absolutely. So within the heart of Virgo is Pisces, literally at the center, right? And within the heart of Pisces is Virgo. So if we tend more toward the Piscean, where we're kind of lost and feeling hopeless and like feeling deflated or dissociated, where can we ground in what I can take care of right now? Where can I just meet my moment, do whatever I need to do to ground, and just take on whatever I can, no more, no less. If I tend more toward the Virgo perseverating on what's wrong, getting stuck in my mind around trying to fix, where can I invoke and invite the Piscean timelessness of I'm good right here, where maybe I don't need to fix it right away. Maybe I can just allow the fluidity of Pisces to just sort of like soften me and give me the larger picture of I'm already good as I am. I am already whole as I am.
And why is this emphasized again?
Because we've got Venus opposite Neptune in Pisces. Venus and Pluto opposite Neptune in Pisces. Yeah. So, and Jupiter and Saturn retrograde are still within orb of their square. So these beliefs can be changed to support a reality based in greater discernment and accuracy, and an allowance of myself just as I am, as I just mentioned. So there are more smaller things going on, but these are the big kind of the biggest energies of this month. It's not an easy month. It depends on, again, how we orient it to it. Do we orient to it as an opportunity for growth, or are we orienting to it as things are happening to me and my habit is overwhelmed? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to shut down, or I'm going to try to control what's happening. And nothing is wrong. It's more about Virgo is very much the sign of self-accuracy. Coming into a relationship with what I'm actually doing helps to discern and discover, wow, where can I do less of that? Where am I still okay or still need to do what I'm doing? And again, in working with the energies productively, I'm going to go into this, if I may. Do you have anything else you wanted to add, Amanda, before I just kind of speak to the energies of how we can be supported in this?
That's exactly where I would want to go.
Okay.
It's just so we have all this, we have the lay of the land, and you've said that this is not the easiest month necessarily,
Yes.
but that it's very dependent on our orientation to what's happening.
Yes.
So I'd love some more like tidbits from you on the orientations that will, more than tidbits. They're much more than tidbits, but
I know
gems from you of the orientation that will actually help us come out of this month feeling more empowered, more ourselves, more
beautiful,
whatever.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. So, as I mentioned earlier, slowing down and relaxing tension in our bodies, just noticing where we carry tension in our bodies, not to try to fix it, but just to notice, to presence it, to allow it, and include as much of ourselves as we are available, whatever that means to you. Will ensure that we are not picking too much, because as I mentioned, overwhelm can be a sign of I'm picking too much, therefore nothing can actually change.
Mm.
When Mercury stations retrograde, I think it's the 3rd or the 5th, either that day or 1 or 2 days before or after, spend some time listing all the ways you compare yourself to other people, whether it's in terms of their level of achievement, either in love, in work, in creativity, in talent, whatever it might be. Really allow yourself to take time and sit with this, even if it takes a couple of days, and even if it is a little painful. I don't want to invoke pain, but it's more like where am I giving myself an opportunity now to be more kind with what I do, to be more honest with what the catalog stories that are running all the time anyway, but I'm just making more space to get more honest and accurate about what's running here, right? Then make a note in your calendar once Mercury is direct and back at 4 degrees of Virgo, which happens September 11th, 12th. And you can revisit this list to see where you are now available to make different choices, and also where you're not yet, and to acknowledge this is all I can bite off now. The rest will take care of itself. Life is cyclical. It will come back to me another time. I don't have to get everything done right now. As an act of kindness and love, I'm picking what I want. That's it. That's my empowerment, right? And see if you can avoid making yourself wrong about what you're not choosing yet and all that stuff. So it's just the grace that we can allow ourselves during this time, which is like part of the fuel that keeps us going and keeps us available, okay? Remember, it's part of a journey to lose our mythology, our track now and again. Absolutely. Absolutely part of it. And one last thing that's been coming to me as I've been working for myself in this place of less certainty, more what's going on kind of shifts. There are 3 lines that we can practice when we are feeling lost or overwhelmed by fear or any other strong emotion. The first one is, I don't know where I'm going, and I know exactly how to get there. I don't know who I am, and I'm being me perfectly. And the third is, I don't know if I'm doing it right, and I'm doing it perfectly. There's paradox in all 3 of them. It's allowing room for the fact that at some level of my being, I don't yet know something. My story can't imagine me somewhere, but my mythology has me covered already and always. And it's just a matter of time. And time is what we are all indebted on some level to as human beings on this planet too. So the more we can work with time and allow the cyclical nature of it, the more we befriend it, the more we befriend Saturn and these fear thresholds, the more that our transitions through them will be more easeful, will be more available for them, and we'll be able to integrate the lessons from them.
I'm getting very clear. Don't try to rush through these things. Trust that whatever is coming up is exactly what needs to come up, and allow yourself time and space to actually be with that.
Yes.
Don't fall into the trap of feeling like you need to be somewhere else than where you actually are.
Yes. Yes.
And I love these questions. Or these lines. I don't know where I'm going, but I know how to get there.
But it's funny because that's the lion trackers. That's the mythology of the lion tracker. But I changed it to, and I know exactly how to get there.
Oh, nuance. I love that. And not but.
Exactly. It's the both and, which is totally
Right.
Mercury. Remember, this is Mercury, Mercury, Mercury. Mercury is so large and in charge during this time because of the powerful union of Venus and the Sun on her north node, geocentric north node in Gemini that just happened, with these planets going through Virgo, with Mercury stationing retrograde in his sign of Virgo, his exaltation, moving back. He's kind of, and being shifting, all this mutable energy. It's like allowing the sands to shift, the wind to come to blow the track away, and just stay and open your senses to what's here that we just aren't able to see quite yet. But we practice, we be patient, we'll get it. It'll show up again.
It sounds like we need to trust that we are resourced.
Yes.
That we have what we need within ourselves to navigate what we need to navigate when we need to navigate it.
Yes.
We might not be able to plan everything all perfectly out, but when we need to, we'll know what to do.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, Andrea Michelle, you're going to be our inner circle astrologer guide in December of 2024. So, inner circle members, you have this to look forward to. And this will be the Sagittarius moon cycle. What is the mastery class? So, every astrologer that guides the inner circle teaches a mastery class to our members. And some of these we end up putting in the academy, some we never do. But what are you going to be teaching on? What is going to be the topic?
It's going to be the retrogrades of the inner planets, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, and what they can teach us. I alluded to this a little bit in this forecast about retrogrades being times to pick up the track in a non-linear way.
Right. I love that.
Those planets, there's different ways of accessing that. There's different ways of approaching it. Speaking to that.
And so Mercury, Venus, and Mars?
Mars.
Okay. And so both natally and by transit?
Just in general, there are the archetypal energies, but then we can talk about, like, when we do the chart examples, we can use somebody's, natal, or by progression, or by transit where it's happening in their chart. So they can be used in any of those ways. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. That'll be so interesting. And we're going through these retrograde periods over and over, like throughout our whole life. So many people fear, especially Mercury retrograde, and there's just so much around it. It's like, well, it's built into nature. It's part of working with, like you're talking about, cycles and spirals of time, and that it isn't linear. So learning how to actually work with these things in an empowered way is very important for all of us, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that is coming. And then Andrea Michelle also offers readings. So if you love her approach to astrology and you want to have a one-on-one reading with her, you can go to astrologyhub.com/connect, find her little profile there, go on over to her website and book a reading with her. I've had, like I said in the very beginning, I've had many readings with Andrea Michelle, and it's always so insightful. And it's so cool how astrologers bring in different aspects. No astrologers practice the same. So for me, getting readings on a pretty consistent basis, I mean, not all the time, because then it can be actually overwhelming. It's like the thing you talked about in the beginning. You want to not overwhelm and really focus. And so having a reading with an astrologer can really help you hone in on some aspects of your chart that are really active and alive right now, and then work with that for a while, and then maybe get another reading at some point. But
yes, we have FOMO, and I think FOMO is like it keeps us from actually getting more of the nuggets of these transits and things than otherwise we would. because we're fearing the next big thing. We're going to miss out on this transit or whatever. And it can be a little too much sometimes.
It can be, and it can be overwhelming. And I see that happen with people all the time, is that astrology just becomes overwhelming and it becomes a thing that just stays up in the head and it doesn't get into the body. And so the real transformative element of astrology doesn't have a chance to actually take seed and come alive within us. So I love that you're having us focus in on just some key things. So make sure you put those in the comments, any of those things that you're like, okay, I'm going to hang my hat on this one. And I'm going to really go deep with that. And we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Thank you so much, Andrea Michelle. I feel like I really have a good lay of the land for August. And it sounds like it might be challenging, but that we have what we need to meet the challenge and to really avoid that tendency towards overwhelm. And right.
So
yeah. Okay. And thanks to all of you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being curious. Thank you for asking the questions. Thank you for deciding to choose your thing that you're really going to work with. And thank you for being a part of our community and always making astrology a part of your life. We'll catch you on the next episode and take care, everyone. We'll see you soon.